What's up guys, in this video I'm going to show you a recipe that I use at home for a authentic tasting chicken curry slash chicken tikka masala slash butter chicken. These are all essentially similar things. Chicken curry is just a general term, but when you go to restaurants and order chicken tikka masala or butter chicken and you ask a server what the difference is, a server that knows what they're talking about are usually going to say there isn't much of a difference between the two. Sometimes the butter chicken's a little creamier. In the US, butter chicken is absolutely my favorite. When I go to India, butter chicken's my favorite. But if you're in somewhere like UK or in Europe where butter is a little sweet, butter chicken can be a little hit or miss. So in the UK, you might want chicken tikka masala versus butter chicken. And the reason why I say it's an authentic tasting is because I am not an authentic Indian cook, but the flavors and the spices that I'm going to be using are authentic. So it will have that rich, spicy flavor of a good chicken curry. So for this recipe, we're going to be using garlic powder, curry powder, dry fenugreek leaf, coriander powder, red chili powder, garam masala, cardamom powder, and of course, our golden salt and black pepper. The thing about curry powder and garam masala is that both of these are actually blends of spices. Some of the ingredients here are actually the same, but they carry them in different proportions. For example, both of these may already include red chili powder, coriander powder, and cardamom, but in different proportions. So we have these individually to also like bring out more flavor in the marinade. And of course, for the marinade, I like marinating in whole milk yogurt. This here is a 2-pound package, and we also use oil. This is a blend of olive and vegetable oil or something like that. It's what we have in our commercial kitchen here, but I actually recommend using sunflower oil. The reason I use yogurt as a marinade is because it's not overly acidic. If you do leave it in too long, it's not going to ruin your meat. So long as you're within 8 hours or so, you'll get a nice tender meat. And of course, the last ingredient is going to be about 1.5 pounds of chicken thigh meat. The other thing is that I'm going to be using a regular tablespoon and then this other spoon that is I guess a teaspoon, but if you're not a tea drinker, it's a dessert spoon. But these are spoons that you should have at home. This is your standard dinner table spoon. I don't know if it's exactly the measurement of a tablespoon. We're gonna go ahead and go with these two to measure with. So the first thing I'm gonna do is open up my yogurt. Now this isn't an exact measurement, but I'm gonna use about 1/3 of this 2-pound container here. So the reason I'm using garlic powder here is because it'll spread evenly throughout the marinade. Instead of having chunks of fresh garlic, you'll get the flavor right through. So whenever we start cooking the chicken, everything will be nicely and evenly mixed. We're gonna put about a heaping big spoon of garlic powder in there, 1 small spoon of cardamom powder, 2 heaping small spoons of curry powder, 1 heaping small spoon of red chili powder. This is optional, or you can even put more of it if you want it a little more spicy. 1 heaping small spoon of coriander powder, 1 heaping small spoon of garam masala, which again, if you wanted a little more kick to it, you can add a little bit more of this. A pinch of, or a kind of oversized pinch of the dried fenugreek leaf, a couple of tablespoons, or the big spoon of the oil. And then I'm just gonna sprinkle in some black pepper as well. And I don't have a measurement for that, sorry guys. Now we're gonna whisk that together. So now we've mixed together a nice spiced yogurt blend here. And this will serve as our marinade. Now you might be wondering why I didn't add any salt. I do that last. I don't like to put too much salt in the marinade because it'll draw a lot of water out of the chicken. So I put that in right before I cook it. I sprinkle it on the chicken. And the last thing, and this is kind of a cheat that restaurants use, is red food coloring to give it that tandoori look to the chicken. So I'm just gonna add a bunch of that too. But again, this is optional. And this will make the marinade nice and bright red. And we'll also color the chicken red. There we go. Now we've got a nice bright red chicken marinade. The last and most important step is adding the chicken, of course. I'm using thigh meat here, and I'm gonna make sure that I've broken some of these pieces apart. I like breaking them apart as opposed to cutting it with the knife's edge, because some of those perfect edges, they look a little too mechanized, too commercial, so I like having nice torn pieces. Tearing it also gives more surface area for the marinade to touch the chicken, and thus making sure that every bite is delicious. All right, so we've got all that in. Now I'm gonna kind of mix it around. The reason I like using thigh meat is because it is very hard to overcook it. You have a little bit more tolerance. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm jabbing the meat a little bit, kind of not too gently, but not too hard either, because you don't want to break the chicken, but what this does is it also gently tenderizes the chicken. So I do this for a couple minutes. All right. Usually you want to let this sit for about 4 hours and let that marinade start to break down that chicken a little bit. And again, that gives you tenderizing, plus it also gives you more tolerance when you're cooking the chicken, so you don't overcook it. So now we're gonna prepare the chicken curry base. For the base, I'm gonna be using a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, chopped garlic this time, because now this is the part that we're actually gonna be eating. I use about a half, or a little bit over a half of a chopped onion. I use saffron, but this I'm gonna be putting in right at the end. Of course, black pepper. So now we're getting the pan nice and hot. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil in there and start browning these onions. Now to speed up the process and get rid of some of the water, I'm also gonna add a little bit of salt now. The reason I'm using a broad pan is because it helps some of the water to escape, and we can always add a little bit of water toward the end. Now the onions have browned and shrunk already a little bit. As you can see, they're beginning to brown up, so we're gonna add in the garlic. And the amount of garlic you put in is really a matter of preference. I recommend at least a couple of spoons, big spoons of chopped garlic. And so we're gonna go ahead and mix that in. And what happens with garlic is because it is sticky, it's gonna start to soak up all the fluid and burn. So what we don't want it to do is burn. So now that we've got that and it's beginning to brown, we are going to add in the tomato sauce. So I've brought the heat down now to a lower simmer heat, and we've added the sauce, or the crushed tomatoes, to the onion and garlic. Now while that sauce is simmering, we're gonna take about an inch of ginger and we're gonna zest it into the sauce. Now the reason I zest versus shredding it is because it cuts all those little fibers in the ginger. Ginger's like really fibrous. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and whisk that in. Now while that's simmering on a low heat, we're gonna add in 3 spoons of curry powder. And these are the small spoons, so they're heaping small spoons of the curry powder, a big spoon of cardamom powder, a big spoon of coriander powder, a heaping small spoon of red chili powder, and again, if you want more of this to bring the heat, you feel free to add more, and 2 small spoons of garam masala. Now immediately, it's gonna start to soak up all the extra moisture in the pan as we whisk this in. At this point, it should be a little bit pasty, but not overly pasty. It should still move around a little bit in the pan. But if it is, feel free to add a little bit of water and cook it down. While we have the curry base sitting and all those flavors are beginning to infuse, what we're gonna do is start working on the chicken now. What you're gonna need is some kind of baking sheet with a cooling rack, and this helps the air to circulate all the way around. And you're gonna want your oven preheated to 550. So we're gonna go ahead and remove as much of the excess marinade as we can and lay everything out. Now I'm doing all this using commercial equipment. Obviously, if you're doing this at home, it's gonna be a lot smaller of a setup, and the chicken will be closer together. That's not a big deal. So now we've got all the chicken laid out. If you're doing this in a non-commercial setting, obviously, you have plenty of space here, and so you can do this on a smaller pan, and it'll easily fit. So now what we're gonna do is, we've saved the excess marinade here. I'm just gonna go ahead and add that to the base. So now we're not wasting any of the spices and the yogurt and everything that went in there. And with the yogurt being in there, we are using less cream in the end, instead of being this really heavy, sort of fatty meal. So I've got the oven already preheated to 550. I'm gonna go ahead and add in the chicken. So the chicken's now ready. Now we've got the chicken here. It's got some nice burn ends, but it's not fully cooked yet. And the reason for this is we want to finish cooking it in the sauce. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this from the pan. And man, does that smell good. Now, once again, I'm not a big fan of cutting chicken. I like just tearing it apart. So I'm gonna do that, add it back in the marinade bowl. And it's that bright red restaurant-like appearance to the chicken. I'm gonna go ahead and tear that apart. I'm just gonna go ahead and mix that around in the marinade bowl a little bit. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and add it in to the base here. Now the sauce was a little dry, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water in and bring it back to the heat. Now right away, you're gonna start getting some rich flavors emerging from this mixture here. And hell, this is even ready to eat if you want to. I just add a little bit of cream right at the end to bring the flavors down one level. And I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but really when I'm cooking this, my eye is on the leftovers. All these dry spices, they're gonna infuse. If I haven't eaten this whole thing by the end of today, they're gonna infuse overnight or over the next couple of days. And I love reheating and eating the leftovers of this dish here. So now the sauce has been simmering for a few minutes. This step is optional, but I've got 3 tablespoons of butter here. Now, if you do want to make this more like a butter chicken, I've got just regular unsalted European style butter that I hope isn't sweet, but we're gonna go ahead and add that in. So we got 3 tablespoons there. Now we've put in a lot of really intense dry spices into this. So to bring everything down one notch, we're gonna add some heavy cream. Now, it might seem by this point that we're really packing on the calories, and we are. The whole idea here is to also provide a really nice, rich flavor. So not only will it be calories, but we're bringing on the deliciousness as well. You know what? I feel like I want it to be a little more creamier, so I'm gonna add a little more cream. Oh, and I forgot one thing. So the other thing I had set aside was a very small amount of saffron as well. Now, this isn't gonna really deliver the punch today, but when we make our leftover pies tomorrow out of this, and yes, I said pies, this will really come through. So saffron is a really light, delicate spice, but you saw that we only put a few strands in there. That will come through on the whole dish. And actually, some people might even argue that that was too much. So if you're somebody who's really has a sensitive palate, who could really taste everything right through, you're gonna appreciate that saffron being in there. Now, the reason I put the cream in at last is because you don't want that cream changing temperatures too much. So we put it in right at the end when we're ready to serve it. Big brown boy pro tip. If you're a college student or a father of 2 or both, anytime you're eating anything Indian, is these, they're called paratha. They are buttery, flaky. They come in frozen at your local Indian store. Delicious. So I'm gonna go ahead and prepare a couple of those real quick. So the pan is already hot at about medium heat. Don't let it thaw, otherwise you're gonna end up having the dough here stick to the plastic. So you wanna peel all the plastic off and just get it in the pan there. So as the dough thaws, it turns transparent, but then as it starts to cook again, it'll go a little more opaque, and that's when you know it's sort of ready to turn. So we're gonna go ahead and turn that. You see it's a little nicely browned around the edges, and we're gonna cook the other side. I don't advise you to use your bare hands if you're not experienced in the kitchen like moi. Now, this all looks great, but let's see how it tastes. I'm not gonna brag about my cooking, so you guys are just gonna have to try it out for yourselves and let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like it, please like this video and please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to subscribe for notifications.